Imagine if you went on a big holiday with your family and they left you behind. And it wasn't until the next day that they noticed you weren't in the car. How would you feel? How do you think Mum and Dad would feel? Well, did you know that Jesus' parents, Mary and Joseph, lost Jesus when he was 12 years old, and he wasn't just down the road somewhere, he was a whole day's walk away, about 35 kilometres. They had left town without him. Now, the story of Jesus going missing is true, but let's imagine for a moment what might have taken place during those nearly 4 days it took to find him. Now, at that time in Judea, every year, families, or sometimes just Dad, would travel to Jerusalem for Passover. Now, Jesus' family lived in Nazareth, so they had to walk for 5 days to get there and 5 days back. They probably walked in a big group with hundreds of other travellers. It would be great, as long as it didn't rain. And over the years, I think you'd make a lot of close friends. Now, in our story, I like to imagine that Jesus had 2 friends he really loved. I've named them Dan and Shani, a brother and sister, and they were always hanging out together. Now back to the story. Eventually the group got close to Jerusalem and the crowds of travellers swelled to the thousands. Mary would always say to Jesus, "Now please stay close by and don't get lost." Does your mum say that to you when you're in a busy place? And just then they heard a loud noise of galloping horses, and everyone tensed up and looked around. Sure enough, it was some Roman soldiers racing past without slowing down. The Romans controlled the whole country and could be very cruel. Everybody let out a sigh of relief after they passed. Now, with excitement building, they approached the main gate of Jerusalem. It was noisy with lots of people who brought sheep, goats and donkeys, and the smell. Trouble was that looking up at the huge city walls and then the magnificent temple meant that you would probably stand in some sheep or donkey droppings. "Oh no," yelled Jesus, "I just stood in some donkey poo." Shani yelled out, "Ha! Jesus, that will teach you to stare at the temple all the time." "You know, I reckon he does it every year," laughed Dan. They walked for another half hour before they found their accommodation, tied up the animals, settled in, and had a rest and some food. 5 days walking, I ain't getting any younger, said Joseph. Now after lunch, Dan and Shani showed up, excited as anything, and said, "Come on, Jesus, let's go exploring. Let's go to the markets first. Is that okay, Dad?" asked Jesus. "Just a moment, you lot. Don't you go too far from here and be back long before it gets dark." So off they went, exploring. "This is so exciting," said Dan. "I love it." "Let's go to some high part of the city wall," said Shani. "I love the view from up there." Now, after about a week in Jerusalem, it was time for everyone to pack up and get ready to go home. The group that came from Nazareth left together. They travelled all day and then set up camp for the night. Now, Mary was organising dinner and said to Joseph, "Could you go to Shani and Dan's place and get Jesus, please?" "Hey guys, could you tell Jesus to come to dinner, please?" But Dan said, "We haven't seen Jesus since this morning in Jerusalem." And before long, Jesus realised to his horror that they had left Jesus behind. Mary burst into tears. "How could we let this happen? What have we done? We have to go back right now." But Joseph knew they would have to wait until tomorrow morning when it would be safer to travel. Now later that night, Shani and Dan came to Joseph and Mary with a plan. Dan said, "We know where to look for Jesus and all his favourite places in Jerusalem. We want to come with you and help look for our friend." And Jesus thought about it and said, "Thank you. You are wonderful friends. Of course you can come." They arrive at Jerusalem in record time and start searching. They searched and searched for 2 days and nothing. They walk up nice streets, down dark alleyways, along the city walls, down to the pool of Siloam, through all the markets, the stables, where hundreds of horses and donkeys were kept, but nothing. It seemed nobody knew anything about a young boy named Jesus. Now on the 3rd day they searched again, and stopped near the Roman garrison for a rest. Joseph and Mary looked terrible. How could we let this happen? Jesus would be all alone and frightened. Then Shani stood up and said, why don't we ask the Roman soldiers? Dan, looking surprised, said, yeah, Shani, gutsy, stupid, but gutsy. So Shani walked over to the open gates of the garrison and spoke to the soldiers. Hello, my name's Shani, what's yours? The 2 Roman soldiers were utterly surprised.
What, you talking to us? Well, my name's Arabicus, and this here is Nescathus. What do you want?
We've lost our best friend named Jesus, and we can't find him anywhere. Have you seen or heard anything unusual?
Unusual? In this city, everything's unusual. Now wait here. I'll go and ask my boss, Narcoticus.
Who had a terrifying stare. Narcoticus comes across
And says, okay, young lady, I may have seen something unusual at the temple. After you lot left, I saw a group of priests talking to a young boy. Or maybe he was talking to them, which is strange. The next day he was talking to crowds of people like he was a teacher himself. I had to laugh. I thought, what's going on here? Now I couldn't care less about him, but I will say he was impressive.
Shani shouted, yep, that's him. It has to be. She ran to Joseph and Mary shouting, he's at the temple, quick, he's at the temple, let's go. The huge garrison was next door to the temple, so it didn't take long to get there. As they go into the outer courtyard, they see a large crowd of people and a young boy talking to them. It was Jesus. Mary and Joseph were overcome with emotion and were about to run up to Jesus when Mary said, Joseph, wait a minute, stop, look at him. Look at what he's doing. Now a group of people were standing next to them watching Jesus and talking about him. One said, his knowledge is amazing, What religious school does he study at? He doesn't. He's a carpenter like his father. What, a carpenter from where? Nazareth, of all places. They all just looked and listened, like everyone else, not knowing quite what to make of Jesus. Then Mary and Joseph could wait no longer and ran around the side of the piazza and up to Jesus. Jesus, where have you been? We've been searching for 3 days. We've been worried sick about you and we thought you might be in grave danger. Jesus was very happy to see them, but also slightly puzzled. Why did you worry? You should have figured out that I'd be here in the temple doing my Father's work. Mary and Joseph were speechless. What? But then Mary sort of understood. She looked at Joseph and said, what sort of boy do we have? He's 12 years old and decides to spend 3 days at the temple talking to the priests and the teachers. Then they all hugged and had a big talk and sorted stuff out. Then Jesus said goodbye to the people he met during his time at the temple area, and they headed off back to home. Luckily, there was still a small group of Nazareth people to travel with, so they'd be safe. Now that night in their tent, Jesus, Dan and Shani were talking about their adventure and couldn't sleep. Mary could hear them and popped her head in and said, come on, you need to get some sleep. We have a big walk tomorrow. Jesus, why don't you do your Book of Numbers trick? Oh, Mum. Okay. Right, Shani and Dan, close your eyes. So Jesus, from memory, started the 4th book of the Bible, the Book of Numbers. God spoke to Moses in the wilderness of Sinai in the tent of meeting on the first day of the 2nd month in the 2nd year. All those who were numbered of the camp of Judah were 186,400 according to their divisions. Of Gershon was the family of Libnites and the family of the Shimeites. The duty of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the priest, shall be the oil for the light, the sweet and the anointing oil. Are you asleep? Boy, that was quick. Thank you, Dan and Shani, for coming to find me. The end.